Welcome to Unit 3, Populations. This unit will explore how populations are defined, how they grow and change, and the specific dynamics of human populations. We'll begin with population ecology, the study of populations and how they interact with their environment. In ecology, we organize life into levels. A population is defined as a group of the same species living within an area. If we start small, we have an individual organism. A group of those organisms make up a population. When different populations interact with each other, you have a community. When the community interacts with the non living or abiotic environment, you have an ecosystem. Finally, all the ecosystems on Earth make up the biosphere. Moving on to the characteristics of populations, we first look at the size and distribution. Population size, represented by a capital N, is simply the total number of individuals in an area. Population density is the number of individuals per unit area. The third major characteristic is population distribution, or how individuals are located with respect to one another. There are three main types, and you can see a diagram of each one on the bottom of the slide. The first type is uniform distribution, where individuals maintain a similar distance to each other. Think of penguins nesting or trees in an orchard. Random distribution means that there's no apparent pattern found. This is one that's less commonly found in nature. The final one is clumped distribution, where individuals stay within groups, often due to resource availability or social behaviors. This is the most common type we'll find in nature. Our population characteristics continue with sex ratio and age structure. The sex ratio is the amount of biological males to females. In many species, a ratio close to 50-50 is ideal for maximizing reproduction. Age structure is a look at how many individuals fall into each age category. This helps predict future population trends. The charts here illustrate how these characteristics can be studied. For example, chart C shows the proportion of males to females across different ages in the human population and how that ratio is affected by causes of death. Any biotic living or abiotic non-living factor that can restrict the size or growth of a population is known as a limiting factor. This could be something like food, competition, predation, temperature, or sunlight. We categorize them into two types, which you can see illustrated with the images. Density-dependent limiting factors are factors that depend on the size of the population. The effect will be stronger in a larger and more dense population. Examples could include things like food availability, competition for mates, and disease spread. Density-independent limiting factors do not depend on the size of a population. Their effect is the same regardless of density. Some examples include natural disasters like volcanic eruptions, wildfires, or extreme drought. Population size is also influenced by movement. Immigration is individuals entering a population, and emigration is individuals leaving a population. The basic formula for population size change over a period of time incorporates these factors plus births and deaths. Population size equals the immigration plus births minus the emigration plus deaths. The graph at the top should be a familiar concept, looking at the range of tolerance. Remember that every species has an optimum environmental condition, like a perfect temperature or amount of sunlight, where the population thrives. As conditions move away from the optimum, populations enter a zone of physiologic stress where the survival is harder. At the extremes, the lower and higher limits of tolerance, the population enters something called the zone of intolerance, and individuals can no longer survive. The carrying capacity, recognized by the capital letter K, is the maximum number of individuals that an environment can sustainably support within a population. This is represented by the stable horizontal line on the graph. Sometimes a population temporarily goes into overshoot, growing slightly over the carrying capacity for a brief period of time. Since the environment cannot support this many individuals long term, this is often followed by something called a dieback event, where some of the individuals die off due to a lack of resources and the population drops back down towards the carrying capacity. When a population experiences repeated overshoots and diebacks, it often results in population oscillations, which are a constant up and down pattern centered around the carrying capacity. This indicates the population is being strongly limited by a density dependent factor, usually something like a food source that becomes depleted. These two curves represent the two major ways populations can grow over time. Exponential growth, also known as a J curve, occurs when a population has unlimited resources and grows at a fixed rate, leading to a steep increase. This is usually seen when a species is first introduced to a new environment or recovering from a major decline. Logistic growth, also known as an S curve, is more commonly found in nature. Growth is rapid at first, then it slows as it approaches the carrying capacity, eventually stabilizing around that limit due to limiting factors. When discussing ecological roles, species can be categorized by their resource use. Generalists are species that use a wide variety of resources, and they have high resilience to change because they can switch resources if needed. They are more likely to become invasive. Think of organisms like a raccoon or a cockroach. Specialists are species that use a small variety of resources, sometimes only one specific type. They have a low resilience to change because if their one resource disappears, they cannot adapt. The giant panda is a classic specialist relying almost entirely on bamboo. Specialist species are often the first to be affected by habitat loss or sudden environmental change because they cannot simply switch their resources. This makes them significantly more vulnerable to extinction compared to generalists. Ecologists also classify species based on their reproductive and survival strategies, often on an RK continuum. K selected species are organisms that are adapted to live at or near the carrying capacity. They have a low growth rate and little fluctuation from the carrying capacity. They are typically larger organisms with late reproductive maturity. They produce few large offspring and provide high parental care. Examples include elephants, humans, and chimpanzees. Our selected species, on the other hand, are organisms that prioritize a high reproductive rate and are more likely to be invasive. They have a high growth rate with large overshoots and major die offs. They are typically smaller and reach early reproductive maturity. They produce many small offspring and have low parental care. Examples include bacteria, insects, and oysters. The difference between R and K selected species is a fundamental life history trade off. K selected species trade off having many babies for high parental investment and long lifespan. Conversely, R selected species trade off having a long life and care for high fecundity or the ability to produce many offspring quickly. Survivorship curves visually represent mortality at different ages within a population. Type 1, for example, humans, is represented as a curve with high survival throughout most of life, with individuals dying in large numbers only at old age. This is typical of K selected species. Type 2 curve really looks more like a straight line. It shows a constant decline in survivorship throughout the organism's life. Some examples would include birds. Type 3, example trees, features a low survivorship early in life, but the few individuals that reach a certain age have a much higher chance of reaching adulthood. This is typical of our selected species. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you guys tune in next time as we shift our focus to human populations.